Hey, yeah, Madan just informed me, so I'm just pinging her and telling her she's a bit early. I'll ask her to log back in.
All right. Okay. Hi. How are you? I'll join later. I'll join in a bit. I was just asked to join in, so I'm joining in here.
Yeah, no worries, Shipra. You take your time.
That's fine? Okay. Thanks, Manish. Bye.
Yeah.
We need to move as fast as we can on the proposal. I need your suggestions to take this forward, and we're left with very little time, so come on, guys. What do you have to say?
I think there are a few points.
If I may share a presentation we made to address the issues we have at hand, I think it sums up the points mentioned and will help us figure out the next steps on the proposal. Slide 2 and 3 talk about the milestones we'll need to cover, while slide 6 takes us through a roadmap of sorts for the next 6 months. Hey, James, you've been rather silent. What are your comments on this one?
So here's what I think, David.
A research document I read recently shows that we need to reach out to over 1 million users. And I don't see why it's not possible, because if we are willing to put in some more extra hours every day.
Hey,
Thanks, James.
So we...
Send the mail out to the team, Sarah. We'll meet again tomorrow. Thank you, guys. Take care.
Are you the boss, Daddy?
Well, yes, honey. I guess I am. What do you want to be?
A boy.
A boy? Why would you want to be a boy?
Because only boys speak and everyone listens, and boys are bosses like you, Daddy. And I want to be a boy too.
Hello and welcome to the UK edition of International Women's Day 2021. I'm Shipra Gill, Head Strategic Engagement and Advisor Relations at Infosys, and I will be your host today for our flagship action-packed event. First and foremost, I'd like to extend our gratitude to all the honorable industry leaders and speakers who are here with us today. Thank you for giving us your precious time. Just like no two individuals are the same, concept and philosophy of International Women's Day holds varied meanings to different people. However, what stays consistent is how women have collaborated and led purposeful actions to redress inequity in the hope of a better and balanced future. Infosys salutes women standing unified for equity and achievement forever. Those who have boldly led transformations and who continue to inspire us. Most importantly, we salute all for sailing through this pandemic, showing us a tremendous resilience and fostering spirit of community while battling together all of the challenges at work and at home. With this in mind, the theme for this year's International Women's Day is aptly called Choose to Challenge, one that stands for balanced futures and urging us to choose to challenge and call out gender biases and inequality for women in workplace and beyond. Collectively, we can all help create an inclusive world. From challenge comes change. So we have planned this program today that aims to deploy a unique participative and experiential approach to galvanize change. This is a unique access to leaders standing for gender equity and who are passionate about building inclusive capability. I can't wait to learn from the experiences and ideas that our leaders will share today. And I'm sure you all couldn't as well. So carrying the spirit forward, I'd like to invite Ajay Vij, Senior Vice President and Industry Head Infosys, to share his opening remarks. Over to you, Ajay.
Thank you, Shipra. Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to Infosys International Women's Day 2021 celebrations. To all our esteemed guests and the leaders from our client partner organizations, on behalf of Infosys, please accept our sincere gratitude for joining us today and addressing this gathering. It is indeed a great honor to have you join us on this virtual platform. I'm truly excited to have some of the most distinguished women leaders share the screen, and most importantly, share their ideas, inspirations, and perspectives. Perspectives on what does this year's global theme choose to challenge mean to them, the role culture plays in diversity and inclusion, on why personal brand equity is important to make an impact. All of these topics and more, carefully curated by our HR leader, an incredible leader herself, will be discussed during the insightful panel discussions. And we then turn the spotlight on the winners of FLAIR Awards, our annual awards established to honor and celebrate our women colleagues in the region who have excelled in their respective fields. I'm sure the messages will resonate with each one of us as we reflect on our personal lives, our societies, and the work done by our organization on diversity and inclusion. At Infosys, our outlook on diversity and inclusion is shaped by the fundamental tenet of company's values of respecting each other. And I'm incredibly proud that our actions reflect this at every level at Infosys. Infosys is a signatory to the UN Women's Empowerment Principles, and as part of its ESG 2030 vision, Infosys is committed to 45% overall women representation in the workforce and 25% in leadership roles by 2030. We also have strong ties to women chapters in IT industry, bodies that are active in community initiatives and empowering women. Within the organization, we have strong employee resource groups such as Infosys Women's Inclusivity Network, IWIN, for women and their allies, which actively ensure that we have a robust and ever-evolving process and system to move the needle on gender diversity. And while these steps are in the right direction, we are not there yet. And it'll take each one of us to reflect on how we can challenge the status quo to enable a balanced future. Personally, I have always admired the inclusivity women bring to the workplace. Their forbearance, sphere of influence, and ability to take teams along in an incredibly harmonious fashion. In all of this, I'm reminded of Ayn Rand's quote. The question isn't who is going to let me, it's who is going to stop me. So let's harness today the incredible passion and experience of leaders who have embraced and conquered the challenge in the journey to the top. Thank you all once again for attending the event, and I'm sure you will enjoy the sessions. Thank you. Over to you, Shipra.
How was that an inspirational start? Thank you, Ajay. As you rightly said, it's not about who's going to let me, it's about who's going to stop me. You also spoke about incredible passion, rich experience, and fearless leadership. And our next speaker exemplifies all of these and more. I'm delighted to welcome our keynote speaker, Fiona Humphries, Chief Information Officer and member of the board at Aon UK. She is an inspiring top 100 listed CIO with over 20 years of experience of delivering technology-enabled business transformation in support of the overall business strategy within FTSE 100 out of 250 companies. I'm sure her energetic and positive leadership style and belief in collaboration to achieve business success and personal pride will come through as she explores the theme of Choose to Challenge Why Women's Voice Matters in her keynote address. Post her address, I would request Nazia Jabin, HR Head for UK and Ireland at Infosys, to carry the conversation further with Fiona. Over to you, Fiona.
Thank you, Shipra. Hi, my name is Fiona. Hi, my name is Fiona Humphries. I'm the CIO of Aon UK, and I'm here today to talk to you about why women's voices matter, to share with you some insight and my own personal experience, which I hope will support you as you progress your career, but also support women around you to reach their full potential. There are only 5 female CEOs in the FTSE 100. Just 5. You can count them on one hand. Face masks. Now, it's nearly a year ago now when we were first asked to wear a face mask. And at the time, I thought, how am I going to go about my everyday business restricted in this way a mask over my face. How am I going to communicate? What I'd like you to do is think about how you felt the very first time you wore a face mask. Hopefully, you felt protected. That was the point, right? But was there anything else? Any other feeling you had as you put that mask across the bottom half of your face and tried to hold a conversation? When I stopped to think about why women's voices matter, it made me recall how I feel sometimes when I'm trying to get my message across and it's being misunderstood or I'm failing to communicate, somehow gagged. Now, there is no physical outward sign that women's voices are not being heard. But to me, freedom of speech, the right to speak one's truth, most of us would consider a basic human right. But if when we say human, what we really mean is man and therefore male, women's voices only ever matter in the context of a male voice. In 2016, when Hillary Clinton was running for office of the United States of America, she had lots of criticism leveled at her for her politics, her content, but the single most prevalent comment she had was about her voice, her shrill, shrieking, monotonous voice, to the point where scientific research was conducted on the back of this to actually determine whether there was any particular reason why people found it so difficult to listen to Hillary. In the end, what they found was this was just a very simple case of sexism. Margaret Thatcher. In her early years, Margaret Thatcher's voice was actually considerably more feminine, a higher pitch and tone. And as the years went on, she purposefully deepened her voice. Now, why did she do that? She did it to sound more male, because she knew without that deep tone, people would find a reason not to listen to her. Now, I have some very personal experience of this that I can share with you. So it's probably more than 15 years ago now. As a very junior business analyst, I was asked to give a presentation to explain why we needed to move from System A to System B. I prepped, I prepared, I made sure I was ready. And as I stood there and delivered that presentation in a room full of IT and sales ops professionals, I thought I'd done a pretty good job. And then at the end of the meeting, the most senior male in the room, most senior person in the room said to me, "If you've got time to hang back, Fiona, I can give you some feedback." And I thought, great, what a brilliant opportunity. He's invested in me, invested in my career. And we sat down and the conversation went something like this. "So Fiona, good job, that was pretty good, but there's something that you need to work on." I waiting, thinking this is going to be great. And it's your voice, your high-pitched, brummy tone. And for those that are listening and don't know what a brummy is, it's somebody from Birmingham in the West Midlands, where I am from and incredibly proud to be from. And this senior executive felt the need to give me this very constructive feedback. And it was simply about my voice, not the content, not the topic, my voice. Do you know what I did when he gave me that feedback? I thanked him. I thanked him for it. Meetings. We're in them all day, every day. And I know as I tell this story, every woman on this call will have witnessed this. You're in there and you're discussing a topic of some importance, and a woman will give her opinion. Nobody says anything. 20 minutes later, a male colleague will say something almost verbatim, similar to the female colleague. And without fail, every man and woman in the room will acknowledge what the male colleague said. But not just that, they won't acknowledge that a female colleague had said it 20 minutes before. I know that has happened to almost every single woman that is sitting listening to this call. But why does it happen? What's going on? I actually think it starts from the moment we're born. In fact, it may start earlier than that. And I'll give you an example. There is a multi-million-pound industry on the back of something called the gender reveal. And for those of you that don't know what that is, this is when an expectant mother will reveal the gender of her baby. And this industry, this multi-million-pound industry, is successful simply on the back of gender stereotypes. So if I was to say to you, there is a colour that most represents girls, and there is a colour that most represents boys. And when the balloon pops and the confetti falls out and it's pink, you all know exactly what the gender of that baby is. Now, what chance do we have if these gender stereotypes are imprinted on us before we are even born? And then what happens? You join the first organisation you are ever part of, and that's your family. And it has a culture, it has norms, it has structure, just like any other organisation. You don't sign up to it, of course you don't. But if you're part of it, you accept the way it operates. Now, this family will start to imprint messages on you. There are girl names, there are boys' names. There are certain toys that a girl should play with, and you know what they are, and toys that a boy should play with. There are certain jobs that a girl should say she might want to do when she grows up, apart from, of course, being a mother, and jobs that a boy should do. Now, these gender stereotypes are very subtle, and we kind of, to some degree, accept them and can continue to perpetuate. But the problem with these stereotypes is they create bias. And as soon as you have bias, you have boundaries. Now, if we are ever to stop the misogyny, the discrimination, the constant diminishing of the female voice, then we must come together, united, with our voices loud. For those women that can't do that, that don't have the platform, we have to do that for them. But we can't do it alone. We need help. We have to ask for help. So I say to all of the men that are on the call today, firstly, thank you. I applaud you. Great job. You're here. But as the mother of two amazing young men, I want to assure you that this is not about disempowering men. That's not what we want. It wouldn't help. All we want to do is empower women, create that level playing field. So we need your support to do that. I want you to think about the women in your life, your mothers, your wives, your daughters, your female colleagues. And I want you to think about, am I doing more than just accepting that women have this right to this level playing field? What am I actively doing to support these women reach their full potential? Whether that's in the arts, whether it's science, whether it's business, whatever it is, am I supporting them? Because women's voices are loud, they are powerful. The Me Too movement back in 2006 created a huge political movement that we now enjoy the benefits on the back of. Black Lives Matter, more recently, was actually founded by 3 women. But we still need help. And why do I think it's important? Well, given some of the crisis that we face into as a global population, whether that's child poverty, whether it's climate challenge, whether it's the rise of nationalist politics, whatever it might be, we cannot possibly be addressing those issues as fully as we could if we didn't invite and expect women to have an equal seat at the table when those conversations happen. We lose the creativity, we lose the ability to collaborate, our emotional intelligence, and all the innovation that we can bring to those very, very important topics. There are only 5 female CEOs in the FTSE 100. And that gender imbalance perpetuates through all levels of senior management in most organisations. It would take 85 years at the rate we're going to address that gender imbalance. I haven't got 85 years. Nobody on this call has 85 years. And if we all accept this is unacceptable, then all I simply ask is that you choose to challenge. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll hand over to Nazir.
That was such an inspirational speech, Fiona, and there's no way that I can let you go before delving into some of the themes you just covered so eloquently. So let me begin with, let's start from your own career. You've played multiple roles in different organizations across several industries where you would have observed and experienced the workplace and culture closely. Reflecting on this rich experience, how does a diverse workplace contribute to an organization's success according to you?
Yeah. Look, I mean, I think there's plenty of statistics out there and data points to prove that a diverse organisation is just simply more profitable. But parking profits to one side, if I look at an organisation and the way it does business and the way it goes about operating in the world and its brand, and as a potential employee, but also as a customer of the products and services it provides, and at no point do I see any representation, anybody that looks like me, anybody that sounds like me, then I simply don't buy into that. It's not an organisation I would want to be part of, and I most certainly will not be spending my money on products and services where I'm not represented. Now, if I think like that, I would imagine organisations should think most people feel like that, and their organisations and their products and brands should be a reflection of the community that they're trying to engage, whether that's to sell or encourage people to come and work for them. And I also just think you're losing a huge opportunity. Diversity and inclusion creates creativity, and that's where the magic happens.
I cannot agree more with you. It's very interesting to note your allusion to culture. So let's explore one such facet. Let's talk about social stereotypes that individuals form outside their own conscious awareness. How do you recognize unconscious bias in the workplace, and how do you consciously deal with it?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the first thing you have to do is acknowledge that unconscious bias exists. But there's actually a really good reason for it. And when you know that, it's something that you can talk about. Because I have to say, I think there is also some fear of admitting that you may have some of these bias. And the first thing is, our conscious mind can only process something like 50 pieces of information per second. That's it. It's quite a lot. But our unconscious mind is processing something like 11 million pieces of information per second. So there is literally no way our brains can do that and allow us to function. So instead it creates shortcuts, and that's how unconscious bias creeps in. So we've all got them, we accept they exist, and we should talk about it. And then what I think you need to do is detect your own. And there are many tests you can do that will allow you to educate yourself on the bias that you have. I've done those tests and was honestly quite surprised and shocked by some of the bias that I have. But now I'm aware of it, I can make sure that I course correct. And then as an organisation, when you accept that bias exists, you can start to detect themes, because there are so many different types of unconscious bias. You can't possibly, as a human, detect them all day, every day. So you have to look at data. You have to analyse that data. And then when you've done that, you have to set targets. Because if you target something, you measure it. And then it means that everybody makes an effort to try and move the dial on some of those targets.
Thank you, Fiona. So I can appreciate this one fact even more now after listening to you, that recognizing and dealing with obstacles is one thing, but to continuously conquer and rise to the top is another. So what, according to you, are some of the roadblocks or key challenges our women colleagues face on their upward journey to join the leadership ranks? Perhaps you could draw from your own experience.
Yeah, sure. Honestly, on a personal level, confidence has always played a part. And I haven't, in my early years, had the opportunity to develop the resilience that I now have. So I've kind of learned to roll with the punches and accept there are going to be moments when I have success, but moments when I have failure. And that's okay. It makes you who you are. But, you know, accepting that all men aren't the same and all women aren't the same, then I would imagine that the obstacles we face are all very different. And as a consequence, there's never really a silver bullet. But there are often common themes. And the first one I would talk about is probably competing priorities. So often there's an assumption made that a woman will always be the primary caregiver in the family. And I know from personal experience that certainly wasn't the case. My husband put his career on hold to help raise our children. And when we have these assumptions about women being the primary caregiver, and then you look across your organisation and you see that predominantly it's your female workforce that are working part-time, or they might have to leave early to collect a sick child, then those assumptions continue to reaffirm. But what we should do as senior leaders is stop and think about, well, are they really competing priorities? Or is it just a simple case that the environment where these women are working does not allow them to do both? And the second thing I would say is probably around style. So I'm proud that I have a style that's unique and my own, and I don't try to show up at work as anyone other than me. I mean, I think we could all probably act for a short period, but there's no way you could go through every day trying to be something that you're not. And I think often when there are roles in senior management, what you find is the more senior managers that are recruiting for those roles are often men. The statistics show that. And there is an element of human nature that we like to recruit in our own likeness, and particularly when it comes to style. I don't see many women always using their unique style and skills, their ability to use their emotional intelligence, team working, creativity as an opportunity, as a positive. It's often seen as a negative. And I think if you fundamentally believe that a man and a woman can deliver exactly the same business outcome, but they just might choose to do it in a different way, and that's okay, and actually it brings something special to the team, then you can start to accept that having different styles is actually an opportunity.
I mean, that's a brilliant point. A very sound advice. I think it's extremely important to have different styles and we need to appreciate one another. I think that's very important. And it's no surprise, since you have a vantage point, Fiona, of being a woman at the top. Let's speak to the adage, power shared is power gained. What would you say to other women colleagues in position of power and on how they can empower other women to succeed?
If I'm really honest, it's took me to kind of a moment to realise that I am a woman in power, which might sound odd for people listening to this, which is the CIO of a big company, but kind of have not internalized that as something that I then have as an opportunity until quite recently. And the first thing I would say that we can do is be honest and tell our stories with truth, our own truth, about how we've got where we are, because there will have been things that we did well and opportunities that we made the most of, but there undoubtedly will have been mistakes that we've made. And I think we need to make sure that we're not seen as something on a pedestal. There's been some magic wand waved that's allowed us to get where we are. So if we're honest about our stories, that's incredibly helpful for those women that are trying to rise through the ranks. And then I think there's something in there about networking and making sure that as senior women in an organisation, you are part of networks that go on to support other women. Share your experience, give them ideas, tangible ideas as how they can progress their careers. And I think the final thing I'd say is, as a woman in a senior leadership role, it's incredibly important that we hold people to account, particularly when we see decisions being made that don't look like they're being made with our gender balance measures or, you know, what we're trying to achieve in mind. So when we see things that don't look right, we should call it out.
Thank you, Fiona. One last question before we leave. what advice would you give to the next generation of women leaders as they go about realizing their full potential?
Oh, goodness me. Well, I think I just take it back to when you're a child, I mean, a really small child, and you might say you want to be a unicorn when you grow up, or, you know, a dinosaur, something so obscure and random, but you hold on to that dream. And it's not until you get older and people start to put limits on you that you start to change that. And it probably becomes something more realistic, but still a challenge. And then as the years go on, there are constant boundaries and limitations put on you. What I would say to women coming through is hold on to your dreams, whatever it is you want to achieve, don't give up. And really importantly, make sure you tell somebody, because that's certainly something I know that I didn't do in my early years, was tell anybody there was something that I wanted to do. So the more people you tell, the more likely you are to get the help and the support that you need. And it can come from the most unlikely places. So just make sure you hold on to your dream, you don't give up, and you ask for help.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Fiona. That was really very powerful. It has been a very insightful exposition. The power of your thoughts, your ideas has lent new dimensions to how we look at the power of voice. And we are all the more richer for your experience. Thank you so much for joining us today. Over to you, Shilpa.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona, for your powerful message on recognizing and conquering biases, your advice to next generation of leaders, and most importantly, on the power of voice. And you rightly said that we all deserve an equal share at the table. Thank you, Nazia, as well, for enabling these messages. Now, to carry forward the next session, I would request Nazia to introduce our next guest for today and continue the thread of scintillating conversation with her. Nazia, over to you.
Thank you, Shipra. To the audience joining us today, a very warm welcome. I'm Nazia Jabeen, and I head HR for UK. Indulge me, if you will, as I ask you a series of what ifs. What if I asked you to shift lock, stock, and barrel and work in not one, two, but three different continents? Or if I asked you to shift to a new domain, having spent decades in a different domain? Or if I asked you to complete no less than 7 marathons in the first 3 decades of your life? Well, my guest today has done all of this and much more. It is my distinct pleasure to have with me Allison Krill, Chief Technology Officer and Managing Director at Deutsche Börse, join us today. Allison has more than 25 years of experience in the financial services industry and has held different leadership positions in Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and Deutsche Bank, and worked in APAC, Europe, and US markets. Allison, it is lovely to have you with us today.
Thank you, Nazia. I'm really happy to be with Infosys today. I was scheduled to join you during last year's International Women's Day, and unfortunately, due to the pandemic, it didn't happen. So really pleased that I could be here today to join you all virtually.
Thank you so much. You were destined to be here, Allison. And having interacted with Allison, I sincerely believe that she's just the leader for today's topic of leading by example to build a balanced future. Leadership is about taking responsibility, the courage and authenticity to stand up tall and enable others, and take everyone along towards a more inclusive future. And knowing that Allison's proven track record exemplifies fortitude and an unflinching embrace of ownership, we cannot wait to hear her perspectives on authentic leadership, building towards a more balanced future. So before delving into this topic, Allison, if you take a step back and look at this year's overall theme for International Women's Day, what does choose to challenge mean to you, both personally and professionally?
Yeah. So personally, I have always sort of taken risks in my life and in my career. And I've not been afraid to challenge myself, take myself out of my comfort zone, and really try new things. And I think that's when I think about the sort of choose to challenge message, it's important that people take risks, because by putting yourself out of something that you're naturally comfortable with, that's the only way that you really sort of develop and sort of grow. And if you see sort of my career journey, and I truly believe that this is something, especially in IT, people need to think about. After 3 to 5 years, you tend to get sort of very, comfortable in the role that you're doing, the business area that you're supporting, maybe the sort of technology platform that you sort of built, and is now sort of in maintenance mode. And so it's important to sort of be thinking about, how do I continue to challenge myself? How do I continue to learn? And what's the next thing that I want to kind of take on as an opportunity? Interestingly, I was chatting to my parents the other day, and they reminded me of a quote that I referenced in a school yearbook about 30 years ago. And it basically said, the only difference between the impossible and the possible lies in a man's determination, or a person's determination. And I think that's actually so true. If you don't try, if you don't challenge yourself, then you don't really know kind of what's feasible. And if I, kind of went back into my 20-year-old self, I would have never envisioned that I would have lived across 3 different sort of continents, and really sort of taken my career in the way that it's gone, from employee to leading sort of significant organizations. So separate from a professional journey, personally, I think the other thing that sort of choose to challenge means for me is it's not just about your own journey, but it's about how you bring others up along with you. One of the, most inspirational things that in my life and individuals in my life is my brother. He was paralyzed in a snowmobile accident at the age of sort of 22. And he could have sort of just, kind of gone into a shell and lamented about getting life's, short straw. But instead, he chose to sort of challenge himself and challenge the status quo. And his main ambition was, I want to be able to do the things that I did previously, but just in a different way. And so I've kind of been part of his journey to really make sure that, you challenge the status quo and what someone in a wheelchair can do, and what advantages and support someone in a wheelchair has. And that's been sort of an inspiration for me to say, everything's possible. You just need to think about things in a different way, and use your sort of determination.
Sure. I think I completely agree with you. I think one needs to push the status quo. And I think you are someone who has exhibited tremendous boldness in pushing the boundaries of excellence. And in doing so, I believe, Allison, that building and leveraging emotional resilience, alliances, and power structures play a very pivotal role. What are your views on these components and others in challenging the norm?
Yeah, so I'll talk about emotional resilience first. And you referenced my marathon history. And I look at life very much like a marathon. Life is not a sprint, it's a long journey, and there are sort of bumps in the road. And sometimes you need to just focus on putting one foot in front of the other to get over some of those bumps. And so, no one's life is simple, and everyone has sort of personal challenges and things that they have to deal with at various moments in time. And it's about kind of putting, those things into sort of perspective. Knowing that there may be, a point in time that you'll get above them, beyond them, but also sort of making sure that you sort of focus on what you're grateful for. So, when I do hit challenges, when I hit setbacks, I always put it into perspective around the things that I have in my life and the things that I should be sort of grateful for. I think it's also important, and especially I think women can be incredibly sort of self-critical of themselves. Many people have talked about, focusing on the past, focusing on the failures. And I was once given sort of a great piece of advice, which said, understand the past, but don't spend too much time sort of over analyzing the mistakes that you've made and what went wrong. Learn from it, but then draw a line under it and really sort of focus on the future and what you can kind of do going forward. And I think that is, tremendous advice, because I think often you carry the baggage self-doubt, or sometimes, carry baggage of maybe what you didn't do well, instead of focusing on sort of the successes or the successes that you can have going forward. I think for me also, going back to the running thing, I am a runner, and it's part of my well-being. It's part of my resilience and my well-balance. When I go out running, it's my me time, where I can be alone with my thoughts. And often it's the time that I spend kind of creating a strategy around whether it's work things or my life in general. And even I would say, my husband and I hike a lot. When I first got the opportunity with sort of Deutsche Börse, and we were kind of talking about leaving the UK and moving to Germany, part of our decision-making process was out on a hike, where we were sort of just processing the pluses and the minuses of making a move, and reaching the sort of right overall sort of family outcome. So I would say, for me, well-balanced and resilience is part of a work-life exercise balance. For other people, they might have other things outside of exercise, but it's important to have some outlet that allows you just to sort of reset and manage the many things that sort of life throws at you. Next, I'll talk a little bit about kind of the alliances and sort of power structures, because I do think it's an important element of being successful in one's career. You have to have sort of a network, and that's a network in the office, but also a network of people who support you in terms of sort of friends and family, and having that sort of group of people that you rely on for support, advice, and even helping you with sort of opportunities is incredibly important. So I can't stress enough to people, build the relationships, maintain them for the long terms, but also make sure that you kind of often sort of leverage it. In moving to sort of Germany, I found myself joining a company where culturally it was sort of very different than my previous one. I'm the only sort of kind of non-German speaker on the leadership team, so I've had to sort of adjust to that. But it's about finding the kind of partnership and the peers that you have a kind of common goal and vision, and seeing how you can kind of help each other to get the right kind of outcome. So I did advise anyone to whether they're in an existing role or a new role, to just think about who is that sort of support structure around them, that's going to basically make sure that they're successful, but also sort of give them opportunity to do new things and try new things.
That's terrific. Thank you so much. And building on what you spoke, culture goes a long way in influencing actions, not just within an organization, but also with different societies that we operate in. You're someone who's experienced all of it. I mean, you've traveled extensively, you worked in multiple cultures, you worked in different organizations and in different continents. What is your take on culture shaping the gender and inclusion strategy, and which in turn influences leadership and a shared future for all?
Yeah. So culture is always a key part. And I think it's important for people to be intellectually curious about other people's sort of cultures, perceptions, where they come from. And I would say it's not just culture, but the understanding where someone comes from, their background, their experiences, and how that shapes them. It is something that is so critical as we talk about sort of being, an inclusive sort of society, and making sure everyone has the same opportunity and sort of potential. I was saying, earlier, sort of, this is my first time sort of living and working in Germany. And I'm still, I'd say I'm 8 months in, I'm still learning. I've not really experienced Germany outside of a pandemic. It's been somewhat challenging to kind of, build myself in terms of my social environment outside of work. And I'm still sort of very much learning the language. But it was important for me to move here to make sure that, I did learn the language and therefore became kind of part of the community. I think the other thing I'll say about kind of culture and why it's so important as we talk about sort of diversity and inclusion is each culture sort of has a different dimension as it comes to creating a sort of equal society. Not all cultures place the same level of weight on a particular family member to look after young kids. Elders take on certain home responsibilities. And so it's important that, in your teams and in your environment, you understand what different people's challenges are, what commitments they have, both in and outside of work, and the pressures that are placed on them, so that you can ultimately sort of create the right working environment for them where they can have, optimal sort of success. Because it is, you have a different landscape when we talk about diversity and inclusion, whether you're in Europe, the US, or Asia, and different societal pressures.
That is indeed a powerful message, Allison, which makes me believe even more strongly that diversity is not just about numbers, but it is a mindset. If we want a new reality, a balanced future, we have to adopt a mindset of equality as a reality. What are your thoughts on this?
I'm glad you brought up the topic, because I think it's too easy to kind of fall back on numbers. Numbers are something that's easy to quantify, and it's and also when you think about gender, it's very easy to sort of say we've got diversity because we've got this number mix. But if you look at people are complex. People are not just one dimensional. I'm a female, yes, but I'm American. I hold a British passport. I have strong ties to Asia, and also strong ties to Spain as well as Germany. And I've had kind of certain complexities in my life that not everyone has had. So that has sort of shaped me as an individual. And I think you don't get that when you look at numbers. So I think as we kind of talk about sort of diversity and inclusion, it is a mindset. It's a mindset about understanding people, understanding their dimensions and what they bring to the table, that has been driven out from their sort of unique set of experiences. And really that mindset shift has to be one of, bringing together people that have different viewpoints, and making sure that they come together in a sort of constructive way. They're all heard, they debate, they discuss, but unless you get that debate and discussion going, you don't often reach the sort of optimal outcome. And there's many, things, the papers and things that have been written around, more productive teams are ones that are diverse teams. And that's because that also have, an inclusive environment. And that's because everyone has a voice, and things get kind of discussed and challenged and debated. So in summary, I think, it isn't about numbers. It's all about mindset, and it's all about the environment that you create to bring that set of unique individuals together.
I'm sure we're all some of the experiences we've had till now. Now, if we can't live them ourselves and learn from them, I'm sure we can live them vicariously through others and take their inspiration. So for our audience's benefit, are there any profound success stories or best practices on personal leadership that you would like to share, Allison?
Going back to kind of the initial point I made is take risks. You get places in life by pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, and taking risks and making yourself uncomfortable. If you're not uncomfortable in something, then you're not really sort of learning, and you're not kind of progressing and investing in yourself. So don't be afraid to uproot yourself in a way that gets you out of that sort of comfort zone. Because I truly believe that my success has been the fact that I've done that. And I don't think you need to move countries or companies or even roles necessarily to do that. But it's definitely, about making sure that every day you say, what am I going to kind of learn, or how am I going to stretch myself in sort of a new way? I think the second thing I want to leave the audience with is take people with you and challenge the status quo for their success. Not everyone comes from the same point of privilege. And some people need that extra lift. And if you invest in them, if you spend time with them, they will be part of your sort of inner circle, supporting you, as you progress and do things both career-wise and sort of personally. And then lastly, I would say, put your setbacks into perspective. Everyone has had failures. Everyone has had setbacks. Sometimes those risks don't quite work out, and it's a setback. But I would say the risks that I've taken where it hasn't worked out are the things that actually I've gotten kind of the most out of in terms of learning, that allowed me to kind of pivot as I took on sort of the next opportunity.
Thank you so much, Allison, for your authentic leadership and sharing what it actually means to walk the path as a leader, and most importantly, taking everyone along towards a more balanced future. This has been a most interesting and insightful conversation that we've had. And now back to our fabulous MC.
Thank you, Allison, for sharing your personal experiences, reflecting your authentic leadership in creating the right environment for uplifting others, and for sharing your message of taking risk and challenging oneself. And Nazia, thank you for sparking this stimulating discussion. Let us now move on to our first set of panelists who will discuss the next game-changing topic of the day: enhancing personal brand and equity, importance of self. I invite Deena Thamasevi, Head of Corporate Communications, Emea at Infosys, to introduce the panelists and take the discussion ahead. Deena, the stage will be all yours. Over to you.
Thank you, Shipra. While 2020 will be remembered for many tragic firsts and for the way COVID-19 changed our lives nearly in every way, in every part of the world, we should not forget that it was also the year of many positive firsts. We made some serious strides for women's rights and gender equality. From new laws addressing domestic violence to women's critical leadership during this pandemic. That's right, research by the World Economic Forum showed that in countries where women led, the response to COVID-19 was quicker, more effective, and stronger. 2020 was also the year women made history in science, politics, justice, business, and sports. It was the year Greece elected its first ever female president. And for the first time in history, not one, but two women won the Nobel Prize in chemistry. New Zealand appointed its first Indigenous female foreign minister, and in the US, Kamala Harris became the first female, first Black, and first Indian American vice president. These are just a few female pioneers who push boundaries to represent us in male-dominated fields. And women continue to make great strides in the business world as well. More than ever, they are serving as CEOs, on boards, and in other positions of influence. And what these women in leadership roles have in common is self-confidence, access to at least one fantastic mentor. And they have created a personal brand that has ensured that their talent is never overlooked. Joining me today to discuss the importance of developing a personal brand is three successful female leaders. Personal branding is especially important for women in a world where glass ceilings are being shattered every day. And I hope the conversations we're about to have and the tips these female leaders are about to share can support every woman joining us today in becoming leaders in their own right. Please welcome my panelists, Egle Bronzini, the Head of Global Infrastructure and Solutions at Roche, Jen Mossop-Scott, Technology Director at TalkTalk, and Marisa Portillo, Vice President of Digital Product Ownership and Design at BP. Hello, ladies. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to go to Egle first. Egle, you have 25 years of experience in pharma IT. Now, that's impressive. And you hold a master's degree in electronic engineering. And in your current role as a member of the Roche Informatics leadership team, you're responsible globally for infrastructure, platforms, data services, automation, and much more. Looking back, what were the qualities and traits that set you apart from other candidates, male and female? And please, could you share some strategies that can help other women achieve more prominent roles within their organizations?
Thank you for the question. It's a pleasure to be here today with the next generation of female leaders at Infosys. So happy Women's Day to everyone. So what were the qualities that set me apart? I think maybe one was really important, which was I dare to try. Sometimes, when you look at a lot of opportunity and jobs, you start thinking, oh, but then what happened with the career of my husband? What happened if I move my children? And what happened if it's not a promotion? And sometimes, you have to try. And I find that, especially for female, you start ruling out yourself from many opportunities based on an algorithm, very sophisticated, that start telling you, well, this is not good because of A and B and C and D. I freed up myself from all of that, and I made some moves that were not maybe a climb in the ladder. For example, when I moved from a global job in a CIO country role, that was actually going down the ladder, because all of a sudden I was reporting to a peer of mine, if you just look at the hierarchy. And yet, the CIO job was the most fulfilling experience I ever had. And from there, I really went on a career path that I really enjoyed. So for me, if I were to summarize my story, it's really 3 points. Number one, show up. If you don't show up, nothing is going to happen. Number two, do your best. Because at the end, what really matters is deliver, deliver, deliver. And number three, detach from the outcome. When you try something new, sometimes it will not go exactly as you plan it, but there is a huge learning that comes with that. So only 3 steps: show up, do your best, and detach from the outcome.
Thank you, Egle. Actually, detach from the outcome is my inner slogan that I keep playing on repeat. Jen, you hold a PhD degree in neuroscience at Oxford, and prior to joining TalkTalk as a technology director, you've held many different titles such as head of IT and head of IT change director within the retail sector. And at Morrison Supermarkets, you were involved across retail and manufacturing arms of the business. When I looked at your resume, I thought to myself, this person must have always believed in herself. She must have always been confident. So my question to you is, how does one develop and maintain confidence in a competitive business environment? And how do you manage to remain true to yourself and your principles and turn these into a personal brand?
So hi, Dina, thank you so much for having me, and happy International Women's Day, everybody. It's just great to be here. I think on that question of confidence, in terms of have I always been confident and effervescent and positive, which is actually what I am and how I would describe myself now? No, not at all. And that's, maybe as a child, deeply shy, right? Or as a sort of starting out professional, maybe post sort of a semi-career in science. I would never have described myself as sort of confident per se, because that takes practice, right? So actually being able to slowly increment and gather that strength and momentum and start to push your own boundaries is something that takes a little bit of work. I don't think people are necessarily born articulate and know exactly what their passions are and how to follow them, or how to really remain true to your own selves. But if you can just be that little bit braver every day and ask the question or seek the opportunity, or as Egle was saying, show up, right? And just watch yourself, that confidence can really grow, and your ability to articulate what it is that's truly on your mind, which is part of being your authentic self, then becomes more and more evident to everybody else.
So something I guess that's always served me very well, aside from practice, if that makes sense, is listening to that inner voice. So if I'm not feeling comfortable with something, I'll manage to find a way of articulating that. If I'm feeling super proud of something, and that it really gels with my own sense of self, I will shout loud about that. And I think I've managed my entire career, including, as Egla was saying, some sideways or sort of, maybe perceived in a hierarchy, retrograde steps, because it's mattered to me personally, and has been something that works for me and my family. Yeah. Thank you so much, Dem. It's actually really great learning for all of us. Marisa, you hold a master's in finance and you work as a vice president of digital product ownership and design at BP. Prior to that, you spent many years within HSBC Private Bank, where you had the title finally as digital COO. I've heard that you're extremely passionate about giving back to your community in your home country, Greece, but also championing for diversity and inclusion within your industry. How important has mentorship been to you, having one, being one, and what advice would you give to the next generation of female leaders when it comes to personal branding and how they represent themselves in a work environment?
Hi, Dina, and thank you for the invitation. It's really great to be here, and happy International Women's Day to everyone. Mentorship for me is very important. It's something I was lucky to have very early on in my career, and it's something that I continue to have throughout my my more adult professional life. And mentorship can help in many ways. First of all, I want to go back to that point that Jen made about, although she was being very successful to what she was doing, she was not necessarily feeling that confidence. And that is related to what most of us know as the imposter syndrome. Many successful people suffer from that. They have that inner voice that tells them that, am I good enough? Do I deserve all this? How did I get here? How people perceive me? And it's really important that we work on that and through our confidence. And one way of treating imposter syndrome is by having a mentor, having someone that knows your journey, knows your story, knows what your purpose is, to be with you throughout this and give you advice and help you guide your next steps. Also, mentor people is also very important. For me, mentorship is a two-way. You always give, but you always take something from the people you mentor. You learn something new. So it's really important that younger people reach out to those that they look up to, or even to areas that they're not familiar with, but they want to learn something new, and see how these people achieved their journey. I think it's very, very critical, even more so today, where we have all these influencers in social media that create a different image, to see through what do we really aspire for, what is our true purpose, and what do we want to be in the future in our professional and personal life, and pair with those mentors, those people, those friends, it could be anything, to help us through this journey.
Thank you, Marisa. I'm very happy you mentioned imposter syndrome. The way I have been dealing with it is my favorite Peloton instructor, Robin Arzon, which I think is always trending live on social media because of the great advice she gives. Whenever I get on the bike and I listen to her, she tells me, what is the narrative that you're telling yourself today? Now change that narrative. She reminds me every day of changing the way I think and speak to myself. So ladies, English novelist and journalist George Eliot once said, it is never too late to be what you might have been. And I think that her statement speaks volumes about personal brand and our ability to influence not only who we are, but also the perception about us. I want to throw the question to all three of you, starting with Egle. Do you have a personal brand plan? Because I've heard many successful leaders do. Is that something you've thought about? And what are the 3 values that you want associated with your personal brand? So Egle, if we start with you.
Thank you, Dina. That's a great question. So I had the luck throughout my career to participate in a number of coaching, training, and some of them were really insightful, because I believe that the first thing is discover yourself, your identity, your true self, and not you don't start with what do you want to show, you start with who you are. So one of the exercises that once we did, it's very simple, you can all do it. It was about really picking up an object, maybe a picture of someone that you like, or a picture of an animal, and then start writing down what do I see, and then you write down maybe 10 attributes, and you stop. And when you look back to these 10 attributes that you have, but you have to write it, you don't have to think it, you have really to write it down, because it makes a difference. You will be surprised that most of the 10 things that you see are actually the way you describe yourself, because the world is a mirror. And a lot of the things that we say are more often the projection of ourselves rather than attributes of the thing that we say. So the first thing is really, discover yourself. For me, I would like to be known as fair. For me, fairness is a very important attribute, maybe because I'm the mother of teenagers and I always have to talk about being fair. But for me, fairness, humanity, I like to think that there is always room for a connection, for a dialogue, for a humanity around everything that we do. And finally, I really wanted to be known for my hard work. Now, some people think, well, maybe that's not a good thing, right? Because what about being smart instead of being hard workers? But I do believe, especially in technology, that, technology changes at a pace that is so fast that you really have to keep up. And the best way to do that is, as I said before, show up for a new job, because you learn through experience. So working hard is gonna yield the results. Be fair, be human. That's really 3 values that I would like to stand for. Do I have a plan? It's not so purposefully designed. For me, it's who I am. So my plan is just being myself at this point. But I really encourage you to spend some time thinking about what are the values that you stand for. And there are many ways to do that. And once you have that, everything will come very naturally.
Thank you, Egle. I'm going to try that exercise tonight. I'm going to take a picture of my best friend and I'm going to write all the things that I really respect and love about her. Coming to you, Jen, same question to you. A personal brand plan, is that something that's ever existed? Is that something you've thought of? And what are the 3 values that you want associated with the brand, Jen?
I think I would probably echo exactly what Egle was saying, is that certainly I'm aware of personal brand as a concept. I've definitely done workshops and exercises. In fact, I go to my local high school very near our office and talk to 15 and 16-year-olds about how to think about their own personal brand. However, whether you understand it as a concept or value having a plan, it exists for basically everyone. It just is a thing. If you think of just rolling off the top of your head that instantaneous, she's a brilliant statistician, or he really brings teams together, or she's a great storyteller. All of those things that you might think about others, whether that's what they intend you to think about or not, it's the reality of their brand. And so if you want to feel comfortable in your own skin, it's not a bad idea to at least have an awareness of how other people are perceiving you and the true nature of yourself that you want to convey. Make sure that there's airspace for that to come through. I think the worst thing is for a perception that a personal brand is something deliberate and other than yourself, right? Because all it is who you are and the way that you want to be. So if I'm thinking about who I am, I could probably summarize in 3, just like Egla did. I am definitely a storyteller that takes big picture stuff and tries to simplify. I am definitely a positive, energizing presence in every room. And I also think I'm a sort of a supporter and nurturer of those people around me, because the most effective teams that you'll ever find are ones that feel that weight of support underneath. And I just get so much joy from doing that for others. So do I have a deliberate strategy about it? No, but would I feel comfortable describing myself because I've thought a bit about it? Yes.
Thank you so much, Jen. And Marisa, coming to you, same question to you. Do you have a personal brand? Is there a plan that you've thought through, or are you just sort of being true, being yourself, showing up? And also, what are the values, the 3 most important values to you to have associated with the name Marisa?
Thank you, Dina. For me, I really try to follow the leaders that I admire. And the leaders that I admire are the ones that inspire action. The ones that don't just tell you what to do, but they explain why they do it. And they make you understand what the real purpose is, whether this is for an organization, for a cause, or for anything else. And that's important, because unless you understand, you cannot relate. And what we have to remember is that people don't follow you for you. They follow you for themselves, because they see something in you that inspires and sparks something in them. So that's what I am trying to do. I'm trying to always be clear on my actions and my purpose, whether this is in my day job or in my NGO, so that people understand and see themselves as part of this journey, whether it's at my work or outside of work, and be able to really connect with that. What describes me, I guess I'm going to use 3 words that my brother always used to describe me. The first one is perseverance. And for me, you need perseverance, because life is going to throw you a lot of stuff. Not all of it will be nice and easy. So unless you're focused on your goal and you know how to deal with the challenges, you're not going to have it very easily. The second one is diligence. You really need to be following through, whatever that is. You can't stop midway, and you have to see the whole journey. Even if it's unsuccessful, you always learn something. And the last one for me, and this is a huge skill that women have, and we should use it even more, it's empathy. We should not forget how others feel around us. I know as a leader, I'm not always the easiest one. I may add pressure to my team to deliver on time, but I'm always mindful of personal situations, and I always try to put myself into other shoes, because having empathy is going to actually help you be more successful, because you cannot achieve anything alone, right? We need our teams with us, and we need to take them with us on this journey. So I guess this would be my 3 values.
Thank you very much, Marisa. What makes me really happy is to hear from all 3 of you how being authentic to yourself and being yourself has led you to where you are. And I think that would really sort of resonate with all the other women and help build their confidence as well, that you can be yourself, you don't have to change, and you can get to the top. So a final question I have is that we live in a time where social media, unfortunately, cannot be avoided, and we're constantly bombarded with new platforms now. This Clubhouse that is helping everyone's mind. And social media is essential for delivering our first digital impression and also building our professional network. What do you ladies recommend for maintaining an effective personal brand on social platforms? And are there any pitfalls to avoid? We start with you, Jen.
Sure. And I'll keep it brief because I know we're running out of time, but one size does not fit all. Some people are deeply uncomfortable with even the merest digital presence. Some people want to shout loud and always, and any of those things is effective for who, you know, the individual concerned. So for me, I think consistency is reasonably important. So you know, I do sort of this much, not that much, and nothing in terms of a digital footprint, but always try to be you know, in line with my own values, a nurturer, an encourager, a teller of stories. And so I would certainly advise against you know, sort of posting in anger or in a particular moment of passion or something, because those are areas that you may regret, but that just ask always, is what I'm saying online in line with who I am? Because if that's true, that's brilliant.
And Marisa, what about yourself? Are you active on social media? Which platforms do you use? And how do you recommend using these social media platforms to basically show our expertise and build on our network and find allies that are going to help us to get to the next place?
I try to be active, Dina. It's not an easy thing to do while you have a day job and an outside of work thing going on, but I would definitely think it's the best way to reach out and find, you know, either like-minded people, or if you're looking to hire people, to find good people, and get your message out there and advocate for what you do. And that will also help you build your brand that we were talking about earlier, right? But you need to make sure that you do it mindfully. I'm all about using platforms. I use LinkedIn a lot, but we need to be very careful about what content we put out there. So we need to use it, but we need to use it mindfully. To Jen's point, don't just write a tweet because, you know, you get upset with something you read, but try to use it in a way that you can, you know, get your voice heard.
And Egle, I want to make sure that you also answer this question. How do you feel about social media? How do you use it? And what are your tips?
I agree with everything that's been said by Jen and Marisa. You know, quality instead of quantity. I like to use the social media platform for internal communication. I have a big organization across the world. So I rather write a post rather than write an email, also because it really forces you to be more on the creative side as opposed to the reactive side. When you write a post in the email, sometimes, you know, you haven't done this, or where, you know, if you post instead of sending maybe a one-to-one message or one-to-many message, I tend to be more in the creative space. So I do that. Then of course LinkedIn, but as Marisa was saying, right, quality instead of quantity. There are a gazillion of posts out there, so don't be the master of the obvious. That's not a good brand, right? So if it's something meaningful, absolutely yes. Is this event meaningful? Absolutely. I really want to congratulate Infosys for celebrating International Women's Day. This is something you should post about.
Thank you so much, Egle. Thank you so much, Marisa and Jen. It's been so wonderful having you ladies with us. I hope we have you back soon on other topics, especially this topic. We can continue discussion over at InfoTV. And thank you so much for all the women and men who joined this panel today. And looking forward to having discussion more than just once a year. I hope we can have this as almost every day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right. Well, I'm going to send you a LinkedIn Connect. It was lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you all. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Wish you three ladies a wonderful day, and I look forward to staying in touch with you.
Well done, Dina. As you guys.
Well done. Bye.
Few takeaways for all of us is to be authentic self, listen to our inner voice, change our narrative of what we speak to ourselves, show up, ask for support, learn from mentors, and most importantly, believe in ourselves and be our own storyteller. Thank you. That was a fantastic session. And all this definitely reflected to what Tom Peters, marketing guru, once said, that we are CEOs of our own companies. The most important job for us is to be head of marketer for the brand called you. And in the business of searching for a next leadership role, it is our personal brand that will set us apart from the competition. Up next, we have Allison Payne, Chief Technology Officer, Emea at Northern Trust Corporation. Allison provides leadership and guidance to the planning, organization, direction, and control of the enterprise technology business unit across the Emea region. Her broad array of technology infrastructure, experience gained working across global, complex organizations driven by motivation and a self-starter spirit makes her the ideal person to talk about the topic of adopting a new outlook to challenge the status quo and growing together. Allison, we can't wait to hear from you, and the screen is all yours. Over to you.
Thank you, Shipra. So just to introduce myself, my name's Allison Payne, and I'm the Emea CTO at Northern Trust. Northern Trust is a global financial institution. It's been established for over 130 years. And what we do is we provide asset servicing, investment management, and wealth management services for like institutions and high net worth clients and individuals and families globally. I'm very privileged to have been asked by our partners Infosys to participate in their International Women's Day celebrations, and I feel very proud to be part of that, so thank you. So 2020 was obviously an incredibly challenging year for everybody, whether it was either at home or at work. It was incredibly difficult. Everything changed, and it put an awful lot of pressure on everybody. One of the interesting things about 2020 is that actually the situation has really accelerated the dependency on tech. And again, that's both for work and for home. You know, what you've seen is traditional, excuse me, manual, almost face-to-face type interactions have all been forced to move to a tech-based solution. So whether that's, you know, a doctor's appointment or a family quiz, you know, whether it's, you know, signing a document using DocuSign or any of those things, we've all had to find a tech-based solution. Now, you know, I think what's been demonstrated is technology has very quickly provided solutions and opportunities. You know, it's proved that you can be very agile, that we can pivot very quickly to fill that void that's been needed. But obviously technology has had to innovate as part of that. But tech has become incredibly pervasive as part of that. And what we're seeing is tech is now, you know, it was always part of everyday life, but for a lot of people, they weren't really aware of it, you know, whether it's, you know, when people use their smartphones or where people, you know, if you're waiting for a bus and there's a sign that tells you it's going to be 4 minutes, you know, that's technology, but people just don't really realize that is what technology is. But I think because of that, because technology has become so pervasive within our society, it's absolutely vital that technology is a force for good. And the only way it can be a force for good is if it reflects the society that we live in. Now, our society is incredibly diverse. It's not made up of one type of person. But diversity comes in all sorts of different flavors. You know, you've got the more visible flavors. So whether it's, you know, gender or color or any of those, or disability, any of those type of things. But then you've also got the non-visible elements of diversity, and that could be, you know, it could be sexuality, it could be educational background, it could be your upbringing, it could be the school you went to, it could be any of those things which really bring a diversity of thought. And that's what diversity brings in all its shapes, is the diversity of thought. And that's so important, because that's how we ensure that we don't have groupthink. Now, I think a really good example, just to sort of put all that in context, is people may or may not be aware of the algorithm that was used last year to actually calculate the grades for GCSE and A-level students. Now, if you take all the politics out of it, what that demonstrated to me was a lack of diversity in how that algorithm was defined. So if you think about it, what happened was it didn't anticipate edge cases. You know, so when those rules around that algorithm and the data sets they used to train that algorithm were thought about, there was not enough diversity around that table to ensure that there was thought about what would happen with the edge cases. So what would happen with those young adults that went to a school that was traditionally not particularly successful, but they were incredibly bright and they could get to Oxford or Cambridge, but that wasn't built into the concepts around the algorithm. And that's because there weren't enough diverse thinkers around that table. So when they ran the algorithm, there was an incredible, incredible concerns that disadvantaged young people were even more disadvantaged by this algorithm. Now, for me, what that demonstrates very much is if it's so vital to have diversity around that table. It's so vital to ensure that we're in a position where there is challenge around how are we doing things and how are we thinking. Should we be doing it that way? And that just for me is a real life example of if we'd had more diversity around that table, without doubt that would have been more successful. So one of the other things about technology is that it has to keep innovating. And again, diversity is absolutely vital to that. You know, we need to be in a position where we challenge everything. Just because we've done it that way before doesn't mean that that's the way we should be doing it in future. You know, groupthink is the arch enemy of innovation, right? So if everyone has the same background and they think the same way, that's never going to change. And, you know, another real world example, if you think about the vaccines, okay, if we think about, you know, the three main vaccines, so Moderna, the Pfizer one and the AstraZeneca one of those does it differently. So two of them use mRNA and one of them uses a viral vector. Now, the one that uses viral vector was actually designed by a woman. So Professor Sarah Gilbert. So she designed that Oxford vaccine. Now, I'm not saying that the only reason it's different is because she's female, but I think it gives a really clear indication of actually, if you have diverse thinkers around that table, you might approach something in a completely different way, be equally successful, but just actually have that different approach to things. So I think, you know, it's really, really important that we focus on diversity, especially at this time, because it's very, very easy. You know, as I said, 2020 was an incredibly challenging year. And, you know, obviously to start with, everyone was focused on that pivot to how everybody could continue working. And so potentially some of the initiatives that we look at, which tries to improve the diversity, especially in areas which are traditionally quite undiverse, like technology, sort of fell a bit by the wayside. But we need to ensure that, you know, we all take responsibility for it. You know, so we need to challenge if we're the only woman or the only diverse person in the room. We need to make sure that, you know, we don't see that as someone else's job, that, you know, we do what we can to ensure that these things change. Now, you know, there's been some research which indicated that, you know, women have actually been disadvantaged more than men by the things like the closures of schools and nurseries, because the childcare and the online schooling provision has fallen back to women to do. And what that's meant is, that's meant that some women have had to take a step back. They may have, you know, had to shorten their hours, or they may have dropped out of the workforce completely. And that's, you know, that disadvantage is something we've got to really think about how we deal with that moving forwards. Now, there are lots of positive things which have come out of the last year. You know, COVID in itself is obviously a terrible, terrible thing, but the way that it's changed working practices is actually quite positive. And the impact of technology on everyday life is really interesting. So again, if we think about the vaccine rollout, that was led by a woman. So Kate Bingham, she was the chair of the UK government's vaccine task force. Now the vaccine rollout has been incredibly successful. Again, I'm not saying that's purely because she was female, but what she did bring to that table was a diversity of thought. You know, there's been many STEM women who have held key roles during this whole period. Another example is Jenny Harris, who's the Deputy Chief Medical Officer for England. And I think what's really important in that scenario is what we're seeing is we are seeing strong STEM role models in key roles during a time of crisis. So what we're seeing is, you know, women are there, they're very, you know, they're role models both for us and for future generations. And we can see their impact. We can see the impact of having different types of people with different types of experience. Now, there's been some other research. There was an article, I believe, yesterday or the day before, which actually said that there was a belief that the impact of technology in this very difficult time was actually quite positive, because it would attract people into technology that wouldn't traditionally consider technology as a career. Now, I think that's a really interesting thought, you know, where actually if we can get more women in at the ground floor, so straight out of university, we can get more women into technology, but also as people are working longer and they've got more of a portfolio career, actually there's an opportunity for more diverse people to move into technology, but later in their career. And that's almost even better, because what we're doing is we're bringing not just that diversity of thought, but actually a diversity of experience from the roles that they've done previously. You know, and I think that, you know, if someone's doing a career move in their 30s or 40s, but actually because technology is so pervasive and they've been working with data and they've been, you know, looking at automation of business process and things like that, that gives them quite a good grounding, you know. And there's many organisations out there that help people to teach themselves coding or teach about technology. So it just gives people that opportunity to really, you know, make some decisions that would bring them into technology, which would help our, you know, just get that diversity of thinking. Now, one of the other positives is the, you know, everyone working at home. That brings a flexibility, which I think, you know, once the schools have gone back, it means there's a flexibility there, which again favours women. Not solely, you know, that's a bit of a stereotype, but I think, you know, especially people with young children, quite often that childcare and the online schooling will fall to the woman to do. But there's other benefits of the situation we're in at the moment from a working from home and from a flexibility point of view. Because what it's done is it's created a level playing field, right? So we're no longer in a position where, you know, you might have 5 people in a conference room and another 5 people that are dialed in either by audio or by video. Now everyone's the same. Everyone's dialing in, hopefully using video, but not necessarily. But they're all in the same situation. So you don't get that dominance around the physical table in the conference room. And that, I think, again, helps us to, when you think about diversity of character, you know, there's introverts within all of our organisations and within society. And actually, it helps introverts, because what it means is that you don't have to try and butt into a conversation in the same way. You know, and there's key cues that that hosts can use to see. So actually, if you notice that someone's come off mute, it's almost like a flag that says, actually, this person wanted to say something, and that then makes it much easier for you to bring them into the conversation. There's also, you know, you've obviously got from a cultural point of view, you know, some cultures are much less, I would say, in your face than some other cultures. And so again, I think that level playing field really helps us bring everybody into the conversation. So I think, you know, just to wrap up, you know, what I would say is diversity is absolutely vital in all parts of life, you know, whether it's home or at work, and in technology, where technology is traditionally not particularly diverse, we absolutely need it. But what I would say to everyone is we've all got a responsibility, right? This is not someone else's job. We have to make sure that we work to encourage people to come into technology, and then we need to support them. So we need to think about what do they need to really help them be successful, whether that's sponsorship, whether that's just a little nudge in the right direction, whether that's some advice, whether that's creating a women's network or just a network of support for people. I think, you need to be a positive role model, right? So again, you're making sure that people are aware of what you're doing. And, you share that with people. You explain the things that worked well and the things that didn't work well so that they can help learn from your experience. So that the mentoring, it works both ways. It's one of those things you can learn a lot from a mentee and you can learn a lot as a mentee, so I think it's really important that we think about it in those ways. I think I would say to, all women in there, step up and be brave. Again, there's research which indicates that, if women look at a job description, if you could do 80% of it, you'd still be a bit like, well, can I really apply? It's not the same for men. Men might be able to do 20% of it and feel quite comfortable in applying for that job. So I think, part of this is about us feeling comfortable when we're uncomfortable. So again, we need to be aware of the people that are around us. We need to be aware that we are potentially thinking slightly differently from other people, but be proud of that and help bring that to the table, because that is how we are going to continue to innovate, is how we're going to continue to challenge, and it's how we will encourage more people into our organisations, which is so, so important if what we want to do is we want technology to be a force for good, right? So, technology is really important. It's going to become more pervasive as time goes on. So we are responsible for ensuring that it's a force for good in our environment. And with that, I would like to say thank you very much. Thank you to Infosys for inviting me, and enjoy International Women's Day.
Thank you, Allison, for that insightful address. All right, we now move on to our next panel discussion led by Janika Dobenka, Head Chief of Staff at Infosys Consulting. We'll introduce the panelists as we discuss challenging gender inequity. Over to you, Janika.
Thank you, Shipra, and happy International Women's Day. Good afternoon, everyone, and on behalf of Infosys, a very warm welcome to our panel. We have with us today Jackie Kirk, who is the co-head Global Transaction Services Product Management Emea at Bank of America, Maria Evrig-Leupold, who is the Group Executive Vice President, Technology and Services at DNB, and Mel Jacobs, CIO, Private Banking, Corporate and Institutional Banking at ABN AMRO. As you all know, the theme for the International Women's Day campaign this year is Choose to Challenge. We've just come out of a very challenging year with COVID-19 drawing a great deal of focus across the banking industry on operational resiliency, banking resiliency, and the ways in which banks engage with and serve their customers. What I'd like to ask the panel is, in such challenging times, how have you and how has your organization continued to be able to focus on advancing gender equality? And Jackie, if I may, I'd like to come to you first. Jackie.
Sure. Thank you. So I think while what we've come through in the last year, and we're still going through in terms of a massive shift to our working patterns caused by the pandemic, is posed challenges. I think as we've been in this scenario for a long time, we're also seeing that there's things that we can learn from this. And if I go back to the early stages of when we were all banished from the work floor, there was many things that we thought we were going to have to put on hold for a short period of time until we would come back to normal working environment. And perhaps some of the things that we were doing towards advancing diversity were casualties of that earlier on. And then I would say is, as this scenario has become prolonged, we've all realized that we can't abandon those things. We have to actually look for the best options that we can find to replicate them. And while one of the ways, the most tangible ways that we advance diversity is in our hiring practices. And hiring, it was one of those things that we thought we can't really do, well, we're not able to interview people. Well, no, after a short period of time, we realized that we can carry on. And so when you're interviewing for new talent, I think you can do that in all the same ways that you ever did, making sure that you've got a diverse slate of candidates. And the same thing, when you bring new talent into the organization, we've learned of new ways and extra efforts that we have to make to welcome new talent. And if that's talent, if that's female talent, we've also made sure that the different programs that we've got to support new female talent coming into the organization, to make sure that they're networked, that we establish them with a mentor, with a sponsor. We've not abandoned those things. We're still doing those things. Now, is it perfect? And is it, can we do everything in the same way that we always did? No, but by taking advantage of technology, just as the way we are on this panel, and we've made sure that during the course of the last year, those things have not fallen by the wayside. So we're still having mentoring sessions for women one-to-one. We're still doing it for groups of junior talent. And we very quickly realized that we need to pick those up and find ways to keep them going as soon as we realized that this wasn't just going to be a problem for a few weeks.
Thank you. And several of the points you made, I think, are so relevant to what we're discussing today, because inevitably, when we talk about gender equality and creating a more diverse work environment, it's very important that we don't just think about the metrics and the KPIs as a measure of success, but that environment is indeed hospitable. And Maria, you and I have spoken about that before, where you talked about the scenario in which working from home has actually been received very favorably amongst your female colleagues. And whereas we've seen that COVID-19 has impacted females in various different industries in different ways, in your organizations, it's had quite a welcome reception to this new ways of working. Can you talk a little bit about the environment that you've been able to create within your organization?
Yes, at least in Norway, we can see that COVID has actually in some ways made it easier to combine working from home and having smaller children, for example, right? But I think that globally, we are probably seeing the opposite, that we are having more struggles getting childcare. We can actually see that the child marriage has arisen again. And we also see that a lot of women actually are getting jobless in this period of time. So we really need to keep up the pace, making, I don't know, a commitment to get those women back at work later on. But in Norway, I think it's been a good period for a lot of mothers and fathers.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's something very important there about that culture that we create within our organizations, and making sure that we don't put unnecessary barriers in place. Mel, what do you think could be the barriers to an inclusive culture? And when organizations are seeking to create a more inclusive culture, what type of advice can you offer?
Oh, well, I'm sad to say, but I often think that the biggest barrier is your own mind and your own limiting beliefs. And if I look at my own career, I would have never seen me doing this job, CIO of a big bank in the Netherlands, when I was 20, 25 years old, maybe not even 30. And I must say that it was a mentor challenging me to speak up, a male boss challenging me to do this job, and me rising to that challenge that helped me get rid of those limiting beliefs. So of course there are all kinds of things in our world that hold us back, but the worst is, in my thoughts, my beliefs, our own beliefs. So rise to the challenge.
I agree.
Yes, and Maria, I could see you nodding along in the background there, and Mel, thank you for your thoughts there, because I do agree. I think that too often it's easy to point the finger at others, but choose to challenging ourselves and accepting challenge from others. And Maria, I'd love to hear your views on that, because I know that your career has taken quite an interesting pivot, if you will. Your background is legal rather than technology, and so clearly you've had to challenge yourself in taking on a very different path. And has that been your own challenge, or have you had the benefit of people coaching and mentoring you to do so?
I've been very lucky. I think I have only had the benefit of people actually mentoring me and cheering on me. And I have never, for example, thought of myself as a female leader. I always thought of myself as a leader. So, and I think the struggles I have had during my way is more about being a young leader, being insecure, and not able to step up when people ask me because I was afraid. But today, I think that I wish somebody told me 10 years ago, just trust yourself, put together a good and solid team around you. It's not a one-woman show. You are not going to do this alone by yourself. It will be just fine if you believe in yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting because it's inevitably not just the environment that we create for ourselves in our organizations, but also the environment around us. And I guess following on that theme, and a little bit about thinking about how we create the next generation of female talent and female leaders going forward. What are your thoughts, and Jackie, if I can come to you first, so what are your thoughts around education, and where do we need to focus more in education on bringing women into certain specialized areas?
Sorry, just getting myself off mute. You know, as time has moved on, the barriers that we face, there are some people who could say, you know, they're gone. This is finished. This is over. This is old news. We've solved this problem. But I actually think the barriers have become so subtle and actually quite sophisticated that we don't see them anymore. And it's all the more difficult to tackle them. You know, if you cast your mind back to, you know, previous generations and women in the workplace, some of the horror stories that, you know, were just the norm and people just put up with them. We don't have that to deal with anymore. And I also feel like I'm one of the fortunate ones. I can't recall many real problems the whole way through my career where I feel like I've been disadvantaged. But the point is that doesn't mean I can disregard this. It's actually more incumbent on me, because I've come through, to realize that there are still challenges out there and they're much more subtle. And so we have to, in a way, work harder to overcome them. And so I've got to challenge myself to look at junior talent below me and consciously make the effort to help pull the woman up. I can't just assume that they will all have a path that just maybe by accident was, more straightforward, that I benefited from. I've got to work. I've got to make the effort to be proactive in reaching out to the junior talent and pulling them up. And I also think when you talk about education, we're beginning to shift a little bit to realize that it's not just about educating women who've made it to help the others, educating the junior women to help them make it. It's the men as well. We need to educate all of us, right? And this is one thing where I think the pandemic has maybe helped a little bit in learning, because all of us have had to deal with different challenges in our home life at the same time as, keeping the wheels on the bus in our work life. And men have probably been a little bit more exposed to some of the balancing act and the struggles with childcare. And I think many of them have actually enjoyed having some time to be exposed in it and help out with it, that might all help some of these things become a bit more equal. We all have a life outside work, whether it's not just mothers that have a life outside work. So I think it's educating all of us as well, not just the women. And I know that we are beginning to do that. And I know that men realize that they have to be proactive on this agenda as well. And more of them are becoming so, which is great.
Thank you. Yes, and I think there is a very powerful message in that, in the male allies that we have around us, or the man ambassadors, as someone called it the other day. Mel, can you tell us a little bit about some of these man ambassadors that you benefited from throughout your career, and what are the tips? So what does a good male ally look like, and what should they do?
I must say there were many, but one that was really significant for me, and that's also how I got into IT, was his name is Frans Wolders. Some people might know him. I believe he's working in the Nordics right now. But I was not granted a job by a woman because I was pregnant of my first child. And that really hurt me and set me back also in my limited beliefs. And then I came for just a simple cup of coffee with Frans, who was then leading IT with the ABN AMRO. And he said, I will hire you. I will even keep a job vacant for you till you come back from maternity leave. You're allowed to take half a year, and then I will ensure that you will be successful because I believe in you. So where a female didn't give me the job because I was pregnant, a male kept the job vacant for me, because even though I was pregnant. So men are just as much important in our careers, and maybe even more defining sometimes than women. So that's my story.
Wow, well, shout out to Frans. I think everyone's probably going on LinkedIn to find him right now and adding him as an contact. You raise an interesting point there about women that advance throughout their career in the very stages of their life, and wanting to have a family and motherhood. Very often what we see across organizations is what is referred to as the missing middle, whereby organizations don't have an issue attracting junior talent, but they don't either retain enough or have enough to make it to middle management, and therefore there is a lack of internal succession to senior leadership. Maria, have you seen that across your career, and in particular D&B, where you have quite a healthy gender balance?
We have a very healthy gender balance, and we have 50% women in group executive level as we speak. But I think that one of the main ways to create a more equal future is to make sure that the women that actually are disadvantaged when they have children. And in Norway, we have both maternity leave and paternity leave. And in D&B, we have implemented this globally. And I have actually 2 of the guys in my management group, they are on paternity leave now. And that is really good because it sets an example for the rest of the organization that the 2 of my management actually can go home and stay with their babies for 5 months. Both of them are having 5 months paternity leave. And that gives me a unique opportunity to also have some mobility in my management group, and it also gave me the opportunity to pull up a substitute young girl who probably wouldn't have had this chance if this nice guy didn't go home with his baby. So it gives an amazing opportunity also for the mix in my team.
It's also a very important message to understand that the parental leave policy clearly is equal to male and female employees, which sets a very clear, strong message for inclusion. Being conscious of time and, with the theme of International Women's Day and the meaning for you all, I would very much love to hear from you as to what does it mean for you to celebrate International Women's Day? Mel, can I ask you first?
I always think that every celebration is actually about standing still on what you have to celebrate. So it's like your birthday, you should be happy that you got a year older. Christmas is not only about the presents, but it's also about family. And for me, International Women's Day is just a moment to reflect on that. We should be happy that we're an active part of the workforce, that we support each other, and just one day just actively celebrate. And of course, every day is Women's Day, but this is just and I also love it that people send out messages and text and things like that. So it's also a bit of fun.
Thank you. Jackie?
Yeah, I would agree with what you said, Mel, that it's nice to mark the positives, absolutely. On the flip side, it's good to remind us that, we need to maybe adjust what we've been doing in the past, because, this is a journey. We've come a long way, and what we might need to do, to take the journey forwards, different to what we've been doing. And I said before, it does become, I think, more sophisticated and more subtle, and so we have to adjust the things that we do accordingly. So it's about taking a step back and thinking about the strategies that we've got to promote this agenda. That's what I would say, because otherwise, it becomes forgotten and you just perpetuate what you've always been doing. And so it's a chance to step back and think and adjust.
Lovely. Maria, what does it mean for you?
In two different. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I can't see you anymore. I thought I was thrown out. For me, it's two different things. First of all, it's a reminder of how lucky I am to be born in Norway, because I don't think Women's Day in Norway is the same as Women's Day on other parts of this earth. But yet, even in Norway, we are one of the richest and most gender equal places in the world. And still in Norway, we can see that, for example, girls, they tend to opt for degrees that will give them lower paid jobs still in 2021. And we are still struggling how to figure out why we have so few CEOs on the listed companies, among the listed companies. So for me, it's both. Remember that we are lucky in Norway or in Western part of Europe, because it's not the same everywhere. And we have still a way to go in Norway as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that, because I saw a post this weekend on LinkedIn, which really gave me pause for thought. It was a response to somebody celebrating Women's Day, and it was a reaction from a male contact who said, "Is this gender inequality point not a little bit outdated?" And I thought, oof. There clearly is still a significant level of misunderstanding. And Jackie, you mentioned this before as well, that, the barriers are still there. The barriers are just different. How would you respond to the post that I've just referred to?
Yeah, so we can still see it in all sorts of statistics. The pay gap that's now reported on is improving, but it is still a gap. Female representation in certain professions is still a very obvious, statistical thing that needs to be explained and understood and addressed. And more obvious things that we've talked about is representation at senior levels of big organizations. It is improving, but it's still not at the level where that improvement is happening by accident. It still takes, I think, the conscious effort and strategies and consideration of big corporates or whatever the organization is, I think, to keep pushing the agenda. You know, only when we see those sorts of statistics completely, you know, blended, I think, can you really say that this has gone away. And it just hasn't. We still see too many statistics that we don't understand. There's no reason to explain them.
Yeah, and speaking to those statistics and the initiatives that are undertaken across organizations, noting that several organizations are perhaps more mature in their gender diversity initiatives than others, what are the one or two things that each of you are excited about within your organizations and the D&I initiatives that you're pushing forward? Mel, if I can start with you.
What I'm really proud of is not only the ambition that we have, but it's actually tapping into the issue that Jackie is noting. Bias is the biggest problem in holding us back. It's limiting thoughts in everybody's head. And we have an active campaign on making everyone aware of their bias in their thoughts, in their hiring, in their putting people in certain positions. So I think bias is just like a mosquito bite. It's small, it doesn't kill you immediately, it's a bit bothering, but still more people die of mosquito bites every year than of shark attacks. And we were now, and it's also the point, we're focusing to think, oh, the awful things are not happening anymore. No, that's true. But there's a lot of small things holding us back. So I'm actually proud that we have a campaign addressing bias in our organization.
Great analogy there, Mel. Maria, what are you excited about for the D&I efforts in your organization for this coming year? Oh.
Maria, you're on mute. Can you unmute yourself?
So, sorry. I'm quite proud of a lot of the initiatives we have within our company, target and goals, and we work really hard to reach them. But I'm also proud of the part we try to play in society in Norway. For example, we have addressed the capital gap. We have had a big campaign on Norwegian in Norwegian media all over the place called She Invest, that actually put focus on the fact that women don't own as much funds as men. We don't save up for pension. We don't buy stocks, and that campaign has been very successful in Norway, and we can actually see the results now. We are selling a lot more of pension funds to women than just 1 year ago. Now it's almost 50% sales divided between the genders. So that is really good. And also the part we play with our vendor and partners, that we try to push the diversity and equality in every aspect of our business life. So that is two different perspectives than what are we doing within our own organization, which of course we do a lot. We actually last Friday won the award of to be get rated as #1 company in the world, actually, for equality. So I think we have been doing a lot this last years.
Congratulations on the award. That's fantastic. We're running very close to time, but very quickly, perhaps one or two words from Jackie before we log out.
Yeah, the other thing that I would say we've done is a bit more education on to make sure everybody understands, and it's not just the men, the women need to understand it as well, that positive discrimination, if you like, it's a difficult tool to manage. It's a tricky one. It's a sensitive one. People can, you know, point to particular consequences of it and say, well, that's perverse. That also is not fair. But we've done a lot of education to make sure everybody understands that it does have to be carefully managed. It's not a casual thing that you just jump to. But if you don't do it, you will never change the makeup of your senior decision makers to try and address the bias that Mel's been talking about. So we do need to put the effort in to consciously promote women so that you're changing the makeup of your senior decision makers, because it's only when that happens that you don't need any, criteria anymore. But for as long as, that bias is there because the makeup at senior levels are skewed, you need to consciously promote women.
Thank you. Yes, and I think that analogy of bias and the mosquito bite is going to stay with me for quite some time. I'm going to steal that from you, Mel, and use that. I'd like to thank all of you today for participating and speaking so honestly and transparently and sharing your views. Clearly, we could have filled a much longer time, and perhaps we'll find a future opportunity to do so. But until then, I'd like to thank you very much. Wish you an enjoyable rest of the day. A happy International Women's Day. I know many of you are celebrating for the rest of the week. Thank you very much once again on behalf of Infosys. Shipra, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, panel and Yannicka, for that masterclass that puts spotlights on unifying tenacity and drives action for gender parity while celebrating achievements of women and uplifting each other. It has been our pleasure that we've got on board such inspiring and exuberant leaders from across the board for International Women's Day. The thoughts, perspectives exchanged today makes the underlying foundation of inclusivity stronger. Thank you once again to all the speakers who left us inspired with their powerful messages. Now, before we move to our next section on FLAIR Awards, which I'm sure many of us are waiting at Infosys, we'll have a short video just to break in.
We are navigators of a changing digital world of nows and nexts, of disruptions and reinventions. We journey from possibility to reality, navigating change around the world and around you. We help businesses become more than a business, to be live enterprises that continually sense, respond and adapt. To find the next opportunity, the next breakthrough, the next normal. We make this real by making Next our mission. Next begins with the power of AI across the enterprise. It is accelerated with digital operating models. It is realized by talent that always stays ahead of change. And by being local to bridge the gap between here and tomorrow. We accelerate this future by bringing Next wherever you are. To make innovation an outcome of co-location and co-creation, while uniting industry, community and university. We know that while Next is an outcome, it is made by people. Diverse in every way, driven to find meaning in their everyday, to move forward and take the world with them. We navigate with passion and purpose, reinventing a sport, experience after experience, reskilling the world, one initiative at a time, rewriting our future from economy to sustainability. We look ahead, but we stay true to ourselves, being respected for our innovative spirit, being rewarded for being relevant, being recognized for being the difference. We are navigators of a world that can be. We are Infosys.
I'll have to move. And now we move to Infosys FLAIR Awards, which we all have been waiting. And thank you for being a great audience so far. We'll shift the spotlight on those extraordinary women of Infosys who have put in their hard work and covered many extra miles. For this, I have the distinct honor of inviting Karmesh Vaswani, Executive Vice President and Segment Head at Infosys, to share a few words on the awards and spirit of celebrating excellence. Karmesh, over to you.
Thank you, Shipra. Well, friends, I'd like to start by tipping my virtual hat to the exhilarating and thought-provoking discussions that we just witnessed from our esteemed guests. Indeed, we are privileged here at Infosys UK to have such an incredible community of client leaders who believe in the power of diversity and inclusion as strongly as we do at Infosys. It is our resolute view that diversity and inclusivity is not just a strategic imperative and force multiplier, but it is also an absolute necessity for us to be a righteous enterprise, a righteous global enterprise. The passion, the authentic leadership, and the resolute conviction to challenge the status quo that we have witnessed today, I'm sure will inspire all of us in our audience, just as it has inspired me, to do more, to be more in building a gender equal future. Today, on this occasion of International Women's Day, it is very apt that we celebrate excellence in the region in the form of Infosys FLAIR Awards. This recognition program honors and celebrates women colleagues who have excelled in their respective fields within the Infosys organization. While excellence is gender neutral, the idea behind these awards is to not only felicitate Infosys women colleagues' achievements and contributions, but also to inspire the stories of role models, to promote further dialogue, to build awareness, and most importantly, to drive engagement around building diversity amongst Infosians globally. These awards are open to all of our business women colleagues in the region, and they cover a range of management, leadership, and technology categories. What has been most heartening to see is the incredible number of nominations we have received. I will also like to thank our judges who have meticulously gone through all nominations and who had the difficult choice to be able to shortlist a panel of winners amongst a number of winning entries that came through. From what we have seen of the quality of the nominations, which showcased exemplary client service, project excellence, innovative solutions, I'm even more convinced that a diverse mix of talent leads to high quality of deliberations, better decisions, and much better results for everyone. To those who didn't win this time, I would like to express sincere appreciation for your participation. And I'm sure your time will come. And I have no doubt in your commitment. And to the winners, heartiest congratulations on the awards. And thank you for pushing the boundaries of excellence. I look forward to seeing your great stories evolve. And I'll continue to talk to everyone as I hand the proceedings back to Shipra to call out the awards and bring your names in the much deserved spotlight. Thank you, and once again, a happy International Women's Day to all of you. Over to you, Shipra.
Thank you, Kamesh. It was definitely inspiring for all of us to hear directly from you, you being a diversity champion at Infosys. Let's continue with the celebrations. It's time for awards ceremony. So without any further ado, let's put our hands together for all the winners. We'll start with the team category awards. Team category awards of diversity champions to recognize teams of all genders who have collectively moved the needle on gender diversity quotient. The winning team has worked tirelessly on rolling out various initiatives around a central framework, engaging multiple stakeholders and ensuring the metrics around diversity and inclusion are closely tracked and governed. Presenting to you, the winners are UKI and HR team, which is one of our favorite teams. Congratulations to all of you. Moving on to the individuals award category. In it, the first category is Outstanding Contribution Technology, which celebrates innovation in the technical space. Starting with our runners-up in this hotly contested category, we have Gauri Kupuswamy from RBS UK. Gauri spearheaded the delivery of data mining tool, which led to cost savings. Congratulations, Gauri. Next runner-up is Neelu Dwivedi, Amex UK. Neelu is the face of Infosys testing team to Amex TLS client and has won client laurels on several occasions. And the next is Helen O'Carroll from AIB in Ireland, an integral part of the direct channels team. Her stellar work is appreciated by all our clients. And it looks like we have joint winners in this category. The first up is Priyanka Mayurush Telvekar from Amex UK. She's a key member of Infosys team servicing in global commercial services portfolio. And while an architect, she plays an additional role of a Scrum Master. And sharing the top honors is Eleanor O'Connor of AIB Ireland. Eleanor's domain knowledge on business banking, her ability to understand the new product implementation, upskilling herself on the microservices and API design through Lex training underscores her commitment to excellence. And the next category of awards is the top performer delivery, celebrating professional project management to exemplary client support services. Up first, we have the runners-up. We have Udisha Gupta from GSK. Udisha has demonstrated exemplary professional skills in digital delivery management, resulting in recovering failing projects successfully at GSK account. Richa Thakur for Mercedes-Benz Financial Services. Richa has demonstrated exemplary skills in managing delivery with exceeding customer expectations on both sides, IT and business, and even third-party supplier management. And the next runner-up is Lydia Dickinson at Eon UK. Lydia leads the DBA production team, which manages one of the most demanding and complex DB landscape for Eon UK account. Her commitment to work and excellence in service delivery speaks volume of her project excellence. And beating out this tough competition, the winner this year is Jyoti Rena for Amex UK. Her individual innovation ideas, technical know-how, strong organizational abilities, and experience in efficient program management has won her multiple client certificates and accolades at many occasions. Now let's keep the applause going for the next category of MVP sales, which rewards knocking the targets out of the park, all the while providing excellent client service. The runner-up here is Deepa Nair at BP, whose astute management of the account has led to growth of Infosys business in functions and enterprise areas. Next, for looking a tie for the first place, we have first up is Eleni Aslanglo from UK Public Sector FinTechs. In a very short time, Eleni has become a co-part of the UK PS team, learning a new and complex domain that demands both flair and attention to detail. Congratulations, Eleni. Our joint winner is Monica Gupta, Financial Services from Ireland, a full stack sales leader whose account grew highest across the unit. She converts potential opportunities into confirmed business, taking ownership from inception till culmination. And the last but not the least here, the final lap of awards, the star performer, business enabling function, awarded for exemplary partnership with business and positively impacting business. The runner-up is one of our panel moderators for the event today, Dina Tamasebi from Marketing. Dina is a strategic communications leader who embodies the Infosys spirit of being performance-driven, inclusive, and client-centric. She's not only raised the profile of our brand in the European region, but also delivered strong, measurable business impact for Infosys. Congratulations, Dina. Our next runner-up is Ajita Perumal, Human Resources. Ajita is handling UK and Ireland human resources. Ajita has contributed significantly to the UK during the COVID management, ensuring employee connect and business continuity and compliance. An excellent team player with a great attitude and team spirit. And the winner is Nimisha Sarkar, Human Resources UK. Nimisha demonstrates true workmanship in everything we do in the Geo, and a commitment coupled with narrative skills and collaborative spirit has helped the Geo in winning multiple accolades in various forums. Congratulations to all our winners, and thank you for continuing to raise the bar even higher and inspiring us all. Many, many congratulations. And on that note of celebrations, we have come to the closure of this year's International Women's Day event. And I'd be remiss if I didn't call out the incredible work that has gone into putting together a very successful International Women's Day 2021. To our external leaders who have taken time to join us today, thank you again for being with us. It has been exhilarating to have you. Let us take a peek behind the scenes of your incredible success, something that many might not have been privy to. And I'm sure our team would imbibe and amplify your message manyfold. I'd also like to thank our Infosys leadership team for their continued executive sponsorship and HR team for dreaming big and making International Women's Day bigger and better every year. And to you, the audience, we hope you enjoyed and learned as much as we did. There's still a lot of urgent work to do to achieve gender parity, and there's no room for complacency. Let's continue to shine a spotlight on anything and everything that is encouraging and uplifting women to pursue goals without biases or barriers. I'd like to end with a quote. With every experience, you alone are painting your own canvas, thought by thought, choice by choice. Let me tell you all that we together will create the new normal, and we will write our own story. And we are enough. Thank you everyone for being an amazing audience. Continue to stay healthy and stay safe.